Dr. Elnatan Chen, who is currently sitting at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. Dr. Elnatan is a scholar of biblical Hebrew grammar and the Jewish grammatical tradition. He wrote his PhD here at the Hebrew University about Yonah ibn Janach, so he's also very much acquainted with the Arabic grammatical tradition. And his research examines the transmission of Hebrew grammatical theory across cultures. And he has published extensively on these matters, including on Judeo-Arabic philology, medieval translation, intersection of grammar and exegesis. And we hope that he will soon be returning to the Holy Land, no?
Yes. Well, soon is a relative term, but yes.
Okay. אני מנמיך. So please, Elnatan, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Avishai. Is Avishai there also?
No, Avishai is in reserve duty.
Okay. So thank you for the arrangers of this conference. I'm happy to well, to be here, not physically, but virtually, and I'm happy to conclude this, I'm sure, fascinating conference. So what I would like to talk about is the letters Halevi. Wait, let me share my okay. Can you all see it? Is it shared?
Yes, just a second. Yes, now we see it. Perfect.
Okay. Hold on. So I would like to talk about the letters Halevi as they are well, their essence and role in grammar and Kabbalah and the thought of two of the I would say most innovators in their fields, Rabbi Yehuda Hayyuj and Rabbi David Halevi of Draâ. There is seemingly no apparent connection between those two disciplines or two uses of those letters in the two disciplines, but well, the common thing is Halevi and is quite interesting, and whether it is a coincidence or not, well, you'll judge. So I would do like a very brief survey. There's obviously a lot more to say in about these, and I will begin with Rabbi Yehuda Hayyuj, of whom we know almost nothing. We know that he lived sometime during the 10th century, probably towards the end of it. He was born in Fez in North Africa, and then immigrated to Cordoba. And what he's known about is, well, he's considered to be the father of Hebrew grammar, of scientific Hebrew grammar. What he's known about is his claim that no verb consists of less than three radical letters, three root letters, whereas before him the root of any word could have consisted of three or two or even one root letter, and he showed that no, in the verbs, no less than three root letters. Now, this is the book he wrote. This is the front page, or the first publication of this book in its original Arabic, Judeo-Arabic. Well, Arabic because it was made in Arabic letters, but as you see here, the title reads "The Weak and Genitive Verbs in Hebrew." Now, this heading is a little bit misleading. First of all, because it is not a direct translation of the actual name of the book, and second, that it deals with the verbs, okay, the weak and genitive verbs, with no mentioning of the letters, which were actually the main thing he dealt with. Now, the original name of the book is Kitab al-Af'al Dhawat Huruf al-Lin. In English, the book of verbs containing soft letters. Now it does deal with verbs, but what weak in them, or literally soft in them, are the letters. So and we shall see that this was his main thing he dealt with, and the verbs themselves was only an application of his theory about the soft letters, namely Ehevi, Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yud. I would like to read a little bit. I don't know if you can see it clearly. On the right hand, you see the original Arabic. On the left, you see a Hebrew translation of mine, and I'm going to read from the English, my English translation. So this is the very beginning of his book. Said Yahya ibn Dawood, my aim in this book is to expound the Hebrew soft and lengthening letters. So right away, immediately, you see he's not talking about verbs. He will talk about them later, but his aim in this book is to expound these soft letters and to draw attention to their patterns and their inflectional changes. For their nature is concealed from many people on account of their softness and weakness, the subtlety of their import, and their far-reaching depth. Therefore, they do not know, they meaning the many people, they do not know how the verbs that contain the soft letters are inflected. So basically, not knowing the nature of these letters brings one to err also in the verbs containing them. They often employ them in their prose and their poetry in an incorrect manner and treat them in a way other than the way of truth. And then he goes on and brings some examples from prose and from poetry of a incorrect use of verbs that contain Hebrew weak letters. Now, when I saw this alteration that occurs especially in the soft letters, I composed, by God's support and help, this book concerning them. In it, I clarified their patterns, their inflectional changes, and the places where they are omitted and where they interchange within verbs, after I had explained why they are called soft and lengthening letters, and the place where the soft quiescent letter is assimilated, and other matters that necessity required and from which I hoped benefit would be drawn. So you see clearly what he's going to talk about, and what I'm going to do next, I'm going to briefly to bring a brief survey of the characteristics of these letters of Ehevi, what he's calling the soft or weak letters. I'm not going to bring all of them, just to get the picture. So the main concept or term here is sak and layen, which is translated roughly as soft, quiescent. Saken means rest. In Hebrew, nach, like shvanach, and layen is soft. And so first of all, for those letters Ehevi, there are two types of quiescence. One which is pronounced, and two, one that is unpronounced. Now, to show what I mean. So the first type of quiescence in those letters Ehevi is, for example, the Aleph in Te'etar v'ye'esor. Now, all the examples I'm bringing here are taken from Hayyuj himself, which are all taken from, all are biblical forms, biblical attested forms. So the Aleph in Te'etar and v'ye'esor, and quote, for this Aleph is quiescent yet pronounced. And the Vav in Shalavti and Mekalelavni, whatever that word means, and the Yod in Vaidaber, Vaishaber. Now you see, later on we'll add the Hey also. But the common thing here for all those quiescents is that they have Shva, Shvanach, quiescent Shva. And in this respect, actually, they are no different than all other letters of the alphabet, which can have shvanach, right? Quiescent shva, which means that they are pronounced without any vowel after them. So in this respect, they're no different. Like any other letter can have shvanach, also those letters can have shvanach, and this is one type of quiescence that is common and shared with all other letters. But the second unpronounced type of quiescence is For example, the aleph in vekam sha'on. You see this peculiar spelling of this verb, and refana, which is a quote, which is a hidden, unpronounced quiescent letter. And likewise, the vav in shofar and olam, and the yud in David and sarid. Hold on, just a moment. Yep, sorry. So this quiescent, like the vav in olam and shofar, and the yud in David and sarid. Well, what you're noticing here that these letters, aleph, vav, and yud, are used as what we usually call matres lectionis, imot kri'ah, which serve the vowels. But it's not exactly the same, as we shall see. Now, you see this peculiar verb here, vekam. This is actually written one time in Hosea with an aleph, and this will serve Hayyuj to claim what he's claiming. And now he goes on. Because, wait, something is, okay. Because of this second type, these letters are called the soft letters, for they become soft until they are hidden, so that they have in pronunciation neither articulation nor perceptible presence. So, from what it seems here, this is sort of a historical, so-called, process in which this second type of quiescence became from, well, these letters are actually with shvanach, like originally there was supposedly pronounced without any vowel, and because it's hard to pronounce them and they are soft letters in pronunciation, then gradually they lost their pronunciation and became silent. In those cases, they're still written, but this doesn't have to be the case. So some of the characteristics of the soft letters. I'm not bringing all of them, just some examples. And what I want to show you here, that in this long introduction of Hayyuj, in which he brings all this theory of the soft letters, well, he strove to practically solve all, or at least most, of the grammatical problems that he had to deal with in biblical Hebrew. Now, not only that it solves, according to his method, all the regularities and the verb inflections, which was unknown until his time, but as we'll see, it also solved many, many isolated, peculiar forms, and therefore this theory of his is so powerful and considered to be very scientific, even though if today we neglected this notion of the sack and lion, but all the rest we still maintain. All the it's still the foundation of biblical Hebrew morphology, basically. So one of the characteristics is the omission in writing. So those letters can be omitted in writing. Here you see some examples. Gibor, that can be spelled and written with vav or without a vav. Shofar, olam, and also proper names, David, Yaakov, Avshalom, all of them can be written with a vav or yud or without it. Also, Nevi'im has two yuds. It's written also even with one yud, either after the aleph or before it. And Nesim has even 4 different spellings in scripture. Now, as you can see from this characteristic that the quiescence can be omitted in writing, what it means is that they're still present even if they're not written. For example, in the word gibor without a vav, this soft letter, whatever that means, this entity means, it's still there in potential even though it is not written. And this has great significance. Also, it explains, or you can see that in verbs like that end with ta, taf and kamatz. So actually, under the surface, the kamatz, well, actually, it always draws a quiescent after it, which is a hey in this case. So when it's spelled without a hey, it's as if there's a hey there. So amarta, shamarta, and natata. And by the way, what helps him, again, he's dependent on what he found in scripture. And for example, the actual verb natata actually appears in scripture in the full with a hey, actually more than twice than the occurrences without a hey. So that helps him also. And same thing goes with the possessive suffix yadcha, which is actually, according to him, yadcha with a hey, etc. And also other forms like eleha, aleha, which looks much more weird, but again, he's dependent on the one single occurrence of this type of word of suffix in Ezekiel, which actually appears with an aleph after it. So he would claim that if you see these letters once written and once not written, therefore you understand that it's essentially there, but the scribes, in order to facilitate, usually or not usually, it depends on the type, omitted them in script. Another characteristic is that those letters can be assimilated into the following letter. So, for example, the verb etzok, which until his time was considered to consist of two root letters, namely tzadik and kuf. But since we have this past tense form, veyatzakta, we see the yud, and according to Hayyuj, there is no verb that contains less than 3 radical letters. Therefore, the yud is part of the root. But what happens to it in forms like etzok? Well, it's assimilated. So therefore, the tzadik is geminated, is with a dagesh, and it's as if it's written like this: aleph, and there's the yud, which assimilates to the tzadik. Same thing with hitziv, that we can learn about the yud from vayit. We have 3 letters here, and again, it's as if the yud is there, only that it assimilates to the tzadik. Now, this explains a whole category of verbs. This assimilation of the soft letters also explains another phenomenon, which the Masora actually called dechik or ate merechik, namely like natatali, where in the border between two words, in certain conditions, the first letter of the second word is with a dagesh. And according to Hayyuj, that's again the assimilation. It's the same phenomenon here. It's assimilation of this hey, which is the soft letter, within its following letter li. Also, v'asita ke'aotav. Here we don't see a hey, but the kamatz indicates that there is a hey, like we saw before. And it also explains some peculiar instances where they're not covered by the conditions of this dechik and atem, like kumutseu, and every time after the word ma beri, so it assimilates. Another characteristic is the substitution with one another. The 4 letters can be substituted with one another, here in a pronounced way. So first, sporadically. In sporadic instances, aleph substitutes with a hey in verbs like et chabar and egalti, whereas the common practice is to write them with a hey, and also in proper names like Hadoram, Adoram, and Hadad and Adad, even in the very same verse, both options appear. And also Aleph and Yud substitute with another, Tluim against Tluim, Bloei, Bloyei, Yishai and Ishai, Aleph and Vav, like in Puva and Pu'a, and Vav and Yud can be substituted in such names as Penuel and Peniel, and even pronounced Alvan and Alian. Now, these are sporadic occurrences, but again, this characteristic of the substitution with one another can also perfectly explain some general phenomenon of all kinds of types of verbs. So, for example, aleph is substituted with a vav, in those kind of verbs like amar. So we have aleph, and in the future tense, future form, we have yomar. Now it's true that the aleph is still written, but Hayyuj clearly distinguishes between pronunciation and writing. And in pronunciation, this is a vav here because we have a cholam, which indicates for a vav. So according to him, in pronunciation, this aleph of amar is becoming a vav in yomar, in pronunciation. And this is true for all this kind of verbs like achal and yuchal. And another type is shav and yeshuv. Again, up until his time, shav was considered to be biradical verb, only shin and bet. But here the kamatz, once again, indicates that there's a soft letter after it, namely an aleph, which becomes a vav in the future inflection, shav, yeshuv, and kam yakum. This also explains these alternations of like yada, and in binyan nif'al noda, so yud becomes a vav, yalad and nolad, etc. And also in this type of weak verbs, lamed hey, according to him, asa, this hey becomes a yud in asiti. And it also explains some general nouns, yom and yamim, instead of what we predict to be yomim, right? So vav becomes an aleph, etc. So you can see and sense that it explains a lot in one single notion of this soft letter, whereas most of these phenomena are nowadays explained in different ways, right? So he, in one idea, explained the entirety of Hebrew grammar, or phonology and morphology, in a way. And lastly is also a substitution with another, but now only in writing. For example, this verb veshina, which is spelled with an aleph, according to him, should be veshina with a hey. That's a regular form, and it doesn't make any difference in pronunciation, only in the writing. So aleph is written instead of a hey. Also, this noun shena, which is sleep instead of hey, and gavha with an aleph instead of hey. And it also explains those instances where we have the word lo, lamed aleph, which formally negates, but the Masora and all the Chazal, the sages, all and the Masora, the tradition explains it as if it was written with a vav. So, according to Hayyuj, that fits the big picture that those soft letters can be substituted with one another. It doesn't explain necessarily when it happens and when it's not, but at least it gives the reason and the grounds for it to take place. And those are some other instances. For example, also the vav of the plural, shupchu, you see a few cases where it appears as a hey. Again, today we explain it differently, but according to him, it's just a substitution within those four letters. Okay, this is briefly the theory of Hayyuj about grammar, and you see these four letters of Ehvi are the basis and foundations, basically, of all Hebrew grammar, according to Hayyuj. And after this long introduction of his, only then he begins to talk about the Hebrew, the weak verbs, which contain those soft letters, and goes on to bring a dictionary of those weak verbs, only in order to apply this theory in practice. This is about it. Again, there's obviously a lot to talk more about, the origins and the influence from Arabic, etc., but this will be saved for another time. And now, for something completely different. Not completely, but a little bit. So now we skip ahead more than half a millennium to Rabbi David Halevi, a Kabbalist who was born in Spain, and he did the opposite journey from Hayyuj, whereas Hayyuj went from North Africa to Spain. He was among the Jews who fled from Spain during the expulsion in 1492, and he eventually found himself in the region of Draâ in North Africa. He composed a book named Sefer HaMalchut. This is the first page of the first edition that came out of this book. And this, okay, I will get back to, I forgot to dedicate, I would like to dedicate, I will get to this back later on. I should have said this in the beginning. This talk originally is dedicated for my late father-in-law, whom I will be talked a little bit more later on. This I have learned with him. He was, among other things, a Kabbalist and Kubal. He was engaged deeply in Kabbalah, all kinds of Kabbalah. This I learned with him. So this book is engaged basically with the connection of the Hebrew alphabet and the vision of Ezekiel in the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel, the vision of the chariot he saw. And in the introduction of this book, Halevi states that, as some other Kabbalists maintain, that the Hebrew alphabet is actually the basis for everything and for the creation, etc. This sits on the basis of his Kabbalah. Now, according to him, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are divided in numerous ways, each of which represents a different wisdom, a different science, but that there are two fundamental divisions that each of one is like the root for all the other wisdoms that exist. Now, the first one corresponds to what we call Maaseh Bereshit, the account of the creation. And this division is the division that mentioned in the very beginning of Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, where we have the famous division of shalosh imot, three mothers, Aleph, Mem, Shin, and 7 doubles, Beged, Kaporet, and the other 12 simple letters. That's one division. And the second fundamental division, that's what he is revealing here in this book, is has to do basically again with the letters of Ehvi. Now, he draws on this famous verse, V'ehiyeh etzlo amon, v'ehiyeh sha'shuim yom yom, etc. This verse, Chazal, sages took it, this whole section talks about the wisdom. So the wisdom says that V'ehiyeh etzlo amon. Now, Chazal explained this to talk about the wisdom or the Torah in general. And Amon, one of the explanations is, according to the Midrash, anyways, it's like Uman, a craftsman, which means that the Torah was the tool for God, which is the craftsman, to create the world. This talks about the Torah. But Halevi takes it not that the Torah is the tool for the craftsman, but rather this very word, va'ehiyeh, which consists of the letters Ehevi, Aleph, Hey, Vav, Yud in another order. These letters are by him, by the God, this is the tool for him to create the world. Now, you see an extra Hey here. Well, it repeats this Hey. If you will, this represents, first of all, you have to notice that the gematria of these 4 letters, Ehevi, is equals 22, corresponding to the 22 letters. Vav is 6, Aleph is 1, which is 7, Hey is 5, 12, and Yud is 10, 22. And if you want, you can add this Hey, which represents the 5 final letters, Mansapach. But he mainly refers to these 4 letters, Ehvi. These are the tool for creation. Now, again, it's a very vast book, and he builds an enormous structure, magnificent structure. I'm only taking this basis of it, which is built upon these letters of Ehvi. Now, it goes like this. First of all, we talk about the Kabbalistic notion of milui, where every letter has its name and spelling. And the letter Aleph with its milui is the spelling of the name of the letter itself. So Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei, and Bet, its milui is Bet Yod Taf. Now, most of the letters are spelled with 3 letters: Aleph, Bet, Dalet. Most of them 3 letters. Only 2 of them with 2 and 1 with 4. But again, this reminds us a little bit of Hayyuj's theory, where all the roots are from 3 root letters, and there are also 4. But whereas the grammarians, and Hayyuj started with it actually, with Hebrew grammarians, they called the root letters Pei Apoal, Ayin Apoal, and Lamed Apoal. So according to him, David Halevi, he calls them Kuv, Chaya, and Ofan. All of these are terms taken from the vision of Ezekiel of the chariot. So the first letter is Kuv, the middle letter is Chaya, and the final letter, the third letter, is Ofan. Ofan means a wheel. Now, we see, for example, we have the letter Bet, and its milui is Bet Yod Taf. Now, again, this Taf is regarded as the Ofan, right? The last letter of the milui. And now we can take this Ofan once again and make it the primary letter and make a milui out of it. And we'll get Taf Yod Vav. That's the spelling of that letter Taf. And again, we take this Taf, this Ofan, and make it the primary letter, and we get a Vav. And from here, actually, it goes on Vav, Vav, Vav forever. Okay, this Ofan goes like perpetually, forever. Same thing if we take Gimel. The Milui is Gimel Yud Mem Lamed, and the Ofan is Lamed. Milui is Lamed Mem Daled, and Daled Lamed Taf. And we get to the Taf, Taf Yud Vav, and once again we got to the Vav, and it goes on forever. So you see both of them are ending with the Ofan Vav. If we take, for example, Resh, the Milui is Resh Yud Shin, and this takes to Shin Yud Nun, and from here Nun, Vav Nun, and now this goes forever with a Nun. Okay? So, for each letter there is its Ofan, but if you go and circling, so-called Gilgul, circling this wheel, this Ofan, you eventually end up with another Ofan, which is called Ofan Acharon, the last wheel, because it's perpetually goes on. And this, he corresponds to, again, a verse from the vision of Ezekiel, Ha'ofan betoch ha'ofan. That's the endless spinning of this wheel. Now, we're getting to the main point. When we take all 22 letters of the alphabet and we do this process of making the Ofan betoch Ofan, getting into the last Ofan, we find that all 22 letters end with only 4 last wheels, last Ofanim, which are Ofanim Achronim Aleph, Mem, Vav, Nun, Amon. You recall the verse we started with, V'ehiyeh etzlo Amon, right? All of these, so first you can see that V'ehiyeh, the Ehvi, which represents 22 letters of the alphabet, all end in the last Ofan with Amon. Okay? But this is not the end of it. In details, it works like this. We have 6 letters of the 22 out of the 22 alphabet letters that their last Ofan is Aleph, namely Hekef Kiseh. That's the mnemonic sign he gave it to them. But with the Aleph, it's a little more complicated. It's not as strict as we saw because, for example, Hey, we have Hey Aleph, and then Aleph Lamed Pei, and then the Pei, he spells it like this, Pei Hey, and it goes again, Hey Aleph. So this is a wider circle, but eventually it alternates from Aleph, Pei, and Hey, but we call it an Aleph. Okay, so 6 letters end with an Aleph. Only a single letter produces the last Ofan of Mem, which is the Mem itself. 10 letters produces the last Ofan Vav. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, you have all the processes here. And 5 letters produces the last Ofan Nun. So you see Aleph, Mem, Vav, Nun. And if you've noticed already, not only that Ehevi represents the 22 letters, which all leads to these final four ofanim, but also the number of the letters corresponds to Ehevi. For 6 letters, which corresponds to the Vav of Ehevi, or Va'eheye, they bring out Aleph. 1 letter, which corresponds to the Aleph of Ehevi, produces the Mem of Amon. 10 letters, which corresponds to the Yud of Ehevi, produces the Vav of Amon, and 5 letters corresponding to the Hey of Ehevi produces the Nun of Amon. This is the main picture that he presents. It's much more complicated and much wider. Just to finish, 2 more minutes. I want to again mention my father-in-law, which this talk is dedicated to him. He passed away almost 5 years ago. He was a an artist, an unbelievable artist, painter, and a musician. He was a professional musician, a composer, and a conductor, and he was well, a Kabbalist. He was engaged deeply for many years in Kabbalah. I learned a lot from him, and I just want to show you 3 of his paintings that represent this study he was engaged in for a few years. Every time he delved into something, he put all his powers in it, including composition and drawings. So this is the first drawing. This is pretty schematic. You see the 4 letters of Vav Ehevi in a different order, and at the end there's Amon, and these are the 6 letters that brings to Aleph, 1 Mem letter that brings to Mem, the 10 letters, etc. The next one is pretty similar, but now a little more colorful. You see the same idea, 4 letters above, 4 letters down, but now you see all the processes. So the main letters, what they called kuv, are in more dark. I don't know how you see the colors there. It's a little
We
bit
see them fine.
great. So it's a little bit darker. So you see it begins with a samech, which is spelled samech mem. The milu is lighter, mem kaf, and kaf spelled kaf aleph with or without aleph. Never mind, kaf aleph pei. And parallel to it, we have also kuf vav pei, and the pei brings to hey, hey aleph, aleph lamed pei, hey, and this circle begins here already, comes to the aleph. 1 letter is the mem, yud mem, and the yud here you see gimel, which brings gimel yud mem lamed gimel, and lamed mem daled, and parallel tzadeh and yud, and we get to the daled dalet. Now to the taf also brings those 3 tiny letters, bet, tet, and chet, and then tav and vav, and this goes spinning all the way to the vav, and same thing with the 5 letters, resh, and we have zayin, shin, and ayin, and nun, etc. By the way, this painting and the previous one are painted on a parchment. He was also a sofer stam, and this is parchment. It's not merely the background colors, but you can see it's a parchment. You can see even down here this fold right here. And the last picture I want to show you is again the same idea, but now much more artistic. So now this is already oil on canvas, and these are more of a 3D letters that floats in the air. Again the idea is the same, made beautifully, and that's actually about it.
His name? What's his name?
His name, I never mentioned his name. His name, I think I have. His name is David Lewis. And
David Lewis.
yes, and if you want, I can later on send link for a website he has. You can see all his art and music, etc.
Yeah,
So
definitely send it to us, please.
I will, sure. And this is it. Just I want to show you how this is actually an outcome of hundreds of hours of us studying together. I come from the grammar side, and he comes from the Kabbalah side, and we found, among other things, that are
You studied this with him after you already were engaging in the exoteric side of of Hebrew?
Yes, yes. During my what was it?
PhD.
I don't know, maybe before my PhD, during my master's, maybe at the beginning also of the PhD. Yeah, all these times, and we found many things that Kabbalah and grammar interestingly share. So I
Yeah.
want to share with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you.